Hello, Irish fans, and welcome to Dome and Domer, the oldest Notre Dame football podcast on the planet. Joining me tonight, Ed Jordanek and Mike Coffey from NDNation.com. Ed, I'll kick it off with you because obviously the big thing was let's just get a win. Who cares how we get it? And that's exactly what transpired. We got it. It wasn't pretty all the time, but I think the good news is the at least the mistakes that we saw are all kind of correctable. I mean, they're all things that we could correct. And, a lot of them were on the offensive line like we thought we were going to see. But I got to believe for Notre Dame fans, number one, to win it in the fourth quarter like we did is a great sign. Number two, to overcome the, mistakes that we had made are all positives, at least moving forward. But we got the W, and that's all that matters, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I think I had them winning by 11 and they won by 10. Now, of course, it probably played out a little differently than I thought it would. I can't remember what you guys said. I think one of you was by 3. And
Yeah, I had 23-20. Coffee was close to that.
Okay. But, I think what we learned is that I think this team has a pretty high floor. I think it should be able to. Sorry about the animals in the background. They'll shut up pretty soon here. They're not mine, by the way. But there were a couple things. You're exactly right. There were mistakes, glaring mistakes in some cases. I'm more worried about some poor tackling than I am about some false starts and some. I thought it was pretty funny that the penalties that we had were the defense jumping off.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Right.
Expect the offense, the defense just has to look at the freaking football, and then they can move. But no, I was definitely in the just win this camp. I think we also caught a break. I think as Notre Dame fans, we sometimes get sort of talked into the strength of our opponent, especially those of us from the Lou Holtz era. But Connor Wegman is terrible. I mean,
yeah, he didn't have a great game, but
when they showed him throwing up, I mean, I figured he had just looked at one of those iPads on the sidelines to see one of his own throws. And then when they said he was a major league prospect, I was like, well, maybe for the White Sox, but I can't imagine who else.
Hey. The Reinsdorfs.
Okay. He was pretty brutal. There were.
It'd be interesting to know if that was.
Well, I actually need to cite Mike Frank. I was listening to his podcast today, and he cited a guy who works for the SEC and on 3, who pointed out that in the 4 starts that Wegman had last year, they played like 4 of the worst defenses an A&M played all year. It's like 2 of them were like low-level Division I squad, and then there was Miami, who wasn't good last year, and I can't remember who the 4th one was, but if you actually look, and there was another stat that said like most of his throws, he has more 50-50 balls that get thrown up than most other college quarterbacks. So it's possible that he benefited from a shortened season last year when, after facing 4 terrible to mediocre defenses, he got dinged up, didn't have to balance those stats against the rest of the schedule.
Could be that. Yeah. I mean, it definitely could be that. So, Coffee, I was going to ask you, because I think that it's pretty obvious that for some reason this football season has taken on more interest, and everybody is dialed. This is a big, big season. And if it wasn't evident, it was more evident than in the obvious statement that Brian Kelly is tired, and I mean tired of losing football games in the fourth quarter. I mean, this is unacceptable, and you can't be making the kind of money he's making and doing that. So it's obvious that this is serious stuff this season.
I thought you were going to reference the ratings, because they were like through the roof. I mean, they were better than
Notre Dame and Texas A&M was a big, huge blowout in terms of.
Well, the ratings for Florida, Miami, and Clemson, Georgia, which were terrible games, were huge. Notre Dame's was excellent, which was a good game, and of course USC, LSU, it was the best of the weekend. So I grudgingly, I'll admit, the playoff thing is definitely going to generate, especially in its first year,
sure,
it's going to generate some great interest. And I think that's great for college football. I mean, I kind of feel like we're living on borrowed time as college football fans, and it's all going to
I
blow
agree
up
with
and
you
go away.
100%.
But we got to enjoy it while we can. And it was a great weekend. And it's
It
always
was.
more
No,
fun.
it's because it's
always more fun to be a college football fan when your team wins, because then you
Yeah.
actually, then you actually stay up to watch highlight shows. And
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
can you imagine if we would have lost? Everybody would have gone to bed. It would have been like,
yeah,
forget it,
yeah,
this is
exactly.
done.
right.
Well,
Otherwise,
I can't remember who the guy on Twitter was who said, I can't remember who the guy on Twitter was who said that Brian Kelly actually cost the SEC 2 games this weekend. So if he had been coaching Notre Dame, A&M would have won. But
Yeah, there you go.
I think that I know there are purists out there who don't like the 12-game playoff. I'm not really sure how I feel about it myself, but Mike, to your guys' point, college football is more fun when your team is still alive.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, winning is definite, but to know, I mean, even like the A&M fans, like if A&M runs the table and gets back to the championship game, I mean, a loss to a quality Notre Dame team isn't going to keep them out of the postseason. And I think having 11 playoff games reduces the number of opt-outs we're going to see. I mean, if there were still only 2 games that mattered, I mean, remember last year? I mean, all those bowl games where all the kids who thought they were top 3 round draft picks all sat out the bowl game. There were so many blowouts that might have been a lot more competitive games if all the rosters were there. I think we're going to see that this year because no one is going to sit out a first-round playoff game. Absolutely no one.
Well, I think
And honestly, if there's a player who does, then we're going to be reading stories about that player about, well, he wasn't a very good teammate all season, so we're not really surprised, blah, 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 that kind of thing.
Well, I think especially with the ability for transfers to make some serious money, it's going to force you to kind of probably play at least that first round game. Because you're going to want it. You got a decision to make. Should I go to the NFL or should I make X amount staying in college? And that's now an issue. That was never an issue in the past.
No, definitely. But I don't know if they're allowed to actually, in whatever contract is being signed, and I'll be the first to say I have no idea how this works logistically. I've never been involved in the process. But from what I've read, I don't believe they can put performance clauses in the NIL contracts that get signed. I think it's
no, they can't. But the point is, Mike, if you're a quarterback and you've got a year of eligibility left and you're being offered $1.5 million to go play college football, I mean, that's going to weigh into the decision of whether you go into the draft or not.
No,
it's
definitely.
It's totally going to have an effect. And so, I think the skilled players are all now second guessing themselves in terms of, all right, if I'm a skilled player, but I might be a second round or third round pick. And so if that's the case, I might reconsider.
Or a seventh round pick like DJ Ungalele.
Oh, God.
He should have gone pro 2 years ago.
Yeah, but he's being paid a lot of money to go to Florida State to lose some football games.
That's true.
Jeez.
He
could become like I think he would become the first opposing player to lose in Notre Dame Stadium 3 times.
Yeah.
That could potentially happen.
To his defense, I got to tell you, Florida State dropped a ton of footballs. I watched that game. It was not all on him. I mean, that tight end, I don't know what was going on with Maylock, but man, he just lost his confidence because he dropped at least 3 balls that should have all been caught. That would have made a difference. I mean, big time gains, 3rd and 10,
Well, what's interesting is that it seems like they're soft. I mean, they certainly look soft.
Yeah, they definitely look soft. I agree with you.
And BC, one thing about BC, I mean, no matter who their coach is through the years, they bring it. I mean, they're not gonna drink away from a challenge. So good.
When you get a guy like Bill O'Brien, that's
that's pretty cool. Better. I will say that the one thing that concerned me about Saturday, which has been my bugaboo for a long time now, and you guys have heard me go on and on about it, but it really gets under my skin. We have a very good defense, but we have this awful habit of giving up a long scoring drive after we score. We had a chance to take total control of the game. We went up 13-6. We had that nice run. We had momentum. And then we give them their only drive of the game at the most inopportune time. like to me, great defenses, that's when they get a 3-and-out or a 6-and-out or 7-and-out or whatever. And you take the ball back and you salt the game away. That's what I remember most about the best Notre Dame defenses, is that they choked you when they had you down. And, it lights out. And so that, against a better team, can come back and haunt you. And it certainly has us in the last several years, where we've done that. We've either been in way too close games at the end because we weren't able to stop a team after we scored, or we lost them games because we had some momentum and we couldn't hold a lead or take advantage of it. So that was the only thing. And again, I'm kind of nitpicking, but I'm kind of not, because that just really just drove me crazy. Can I say one other thing about the transfer thing that you guys were talking about? In the context of Notre Dame, I think it's pretty impressive that we've got these transfers that came in, and setting aside the money for a second, but like the 3 receiver guys, okay, Mitchell.
Yeah. I was just going to say, that's exactly where I was going.
They will all have probably their worst years statistically, right, as college players, or at least college starters, right? I mean, Mitchell's not going to have the kind of stats he had last year. Collins isn't going to have the kind of stats he had when he was a starter at Clemson. Harrison isn't going to have it. But that Notre Dame brand and exposure really means something for these guys, because they're going to raise their profile. And if they have 3 or 4 really good plays, that's going to go further than the 1,000-yard, 60-catch season that they had at Florida International, or wherever the hell Chris Mitchell was. I can't remember now. But one of your Florida schools down there, Bram, there's so many of them, I can't keep them straight. But you know what I mean? So I think it's a tribute to the staff to sell them on what they're offering, because what they're really offering is a chance to be in the playoff. They're not offering them a chance to be the man. And wide receivers are divas to begin with. So I think it's pretty impressive that they got these guys to come. And I think they're all going to contribute before the year is over. You could see them. They all have something. And, I think they're all going to be part of this story. None of them are going to be sitting on the bench too much.
Yeah, no, that's a perfect lead in.
Is out for a while.
Yeah, but hopefully only a couple of weeks. Yeah. But Coffee, I was going to go right there with the next point, and that is it's interesting because we just had a big, huge marquee game in Georgia, Clemson. Clemson with Dabo Swinney not going the transfer route, and here's a perfect example of Notre Dame going the transfer route, getting a guy in the likes of Bo Collins, and then him having the kind of game that he had last night. Not big, huge statistically, but holy cow, there were a couple big, huge grabs that he made that you don't see normally from the likes of the Notre Dame receiving corps. And especially now, he could have, unfortunately, got called for that push in the back after he caught that ball on the sidelines. That could have easily gone against us. But the ref decided to tuck that flag in his pocket. But anyways, the point is he made some really big, huge grabs, which it just goes to show like how critical this is in terms of the success of this team this year.
Absolutely. I think one thing that Collins brought to the field Saturday was experience. I mean, he's played in a lot, when he was at Clemson, played in a lot of big games, had to come up with a lot of big catches. I think that atmosphere of the noise and the heat and whatever it was that Notre Dame was dealing with, I think you would see it affecting a player like him less, only because he's played in a bunch of tough places. He's gone up against some good teams. He had the experience to make those grabs. And yeah, maybe he won't make it won't have the gaudy stats that he might have had like at Clemson or wherever. But in addition to him benefiting from the brand, Notre Dame is going to benefit from the fact that he's got the mental wherewithal to handle pressure that maybe some of the younger guys, I mean, who are high quality players in their own right, but there's no substitute for experience in a lot of these cases, and certainly Collins has it.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that was an area too where there's so much room for improvement. I mean, I didn't think that receivers were particularly in sync with Riley Leonard. There was a fair amount of shakiness there, and I think that's you got to break the seal at some point. So now they kind of have been through one game, and I think that'll improve. You know, and I don't know, some of those were poor route running, or Riley Leonard poor throws, or a combination of the two. But there are plenty of instances where you're like, you know, okay, that was not that was not by design.
Right.
So, you know, so I think that can only get better. I think what we're all saying is, you know, it's nice to see the fact that we do have some weapons there that will make the difference in some games. We do have the ability to throw the ball downfield. We have the ability. We have a couple, you know, with Faison. I think I was upset that he was off the field, because it seemed like the kind of game where a playmaker like him could make a difference down the stretch. You know, one
Yeah,
of those bubble
exactly.
screens
Just
Yeah.
the
gets
separation
loose.
that he
Yeah,
creates. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I agree. So Coffee, I find this fascinating. I'm kind of curious your thoughts on this, but uh, and not to pick on Brian Kelly, I'm not. I mean, I'm
Oh,
joking
do
around.
please.
I'm joking around a little bit with him. I mean, I do respect Brian Kelly. He's a good football coach. He is going to win a lot of football games. There's no doubt about it. He beat Alabama in his first try. The guy
Yes.
clearly knows how to coach football. But the thing that I knock him for, and the thing that I think is interesting in terms of Freeman, is it's one to be a disciplinarian, but it's a totally different thing to also connect with your players and earn the respect of your players, to then execute at a high level because you believe so much in your coach. And I think we're seeing the beginnings of that now. It's early. I don't want to hang our hat on a Texas A&M win, but this is Freeman's third year, and I think there were a couple signs last night. And Herb Street actually called this
Three
out.
nights
He's
ago.
like,
2 nights ago.
"Yeah, true.
Oh.
2 nights ago. Sorry about that." But I've been watching so many replays. I feel like it was last night. But Herb Street kind of called this out, and he said, you know, when you looked at Marcus Freeman on the sideline after they punched it in the fourth quarter, Freeman was saying, "I told you so. I told you this on Wednesday."
Mhm.
And that's the kind of thing that you want. You want that connection with your players, that they're all in for you because they believe in you so much that they want to execute and deliver. And I just, for whatever reason, I don't think Brian Kelly had that. There was a big disconnect there, and I think we're beginning to see the early signs that, you know what, maybe Freeman is connecting better at that level with the players.
You
But it is
connect
still early.
you connect better with your players when you're not throwing them under the bus after you lose. Honestly, that's how I feel about it. Because so I said in our board earlier today, Brian Kelly may say during a press conference, we need to coach better. For a coach like Freeman, the unspoken follow-up to that is our players deserve the best game plan we can give them. If we lost, we need to do a better job of putting them in a position to succeed, because that's what we're being paid for and that's our jobs. Brian Kelly's unspoken rejoinder after that is, we need to coach better because these kids are so stupid they couldn't hit water if they fell out of a boat.
Well,
And
now wait a second. I mean, arguably the most successful coach in the last 50 years at Notre Dame, constantly threw her players under the bus. I mean, if you ever watched a Muff McGraw post-game press conference after they lost, she was brutally honest with how poorly they played, what they needed to get back to work on. I mean, we don't think of that because of her successes, okay? Brian Kelly's, he's going to get heat because the fact of the matter is he's never gotten the golden prize. He would be
Right.
getting so much leeway on this stuff if he had, you know, an SEC championship or a national championship, or, you know, and that's really what he's been, a very successful coach, but he hasn't gotten the brass ring. And that's why he is so, and plus he rubs people the wrong way, understandably, because of the way he comes across sometimes. I think it's more, if you watched him on the sidelines Sunday night, and I can't believe we're devoting this much of Dome and Domer to Brian Kelly, but, you know,
all the people on my side say, you should let that go. Well,
no,
we're going to keep
it's
going.
interesting. I mean, he's, you know, I think these are the kind of things that make, you know, college football so fun. There's characters,
Yeah,
right?
it's
And
interesting.
in his own
Sure.
way, and he was basically, he seemed, you know, he's definitely, either consciously or because of age, much more subdued during the game on the sidelines now.
Yeah.
He's not as animated as he once was.
He definitely is. I agree.
Right? And part of that is he's kind of, but I think what you were saying, Bram, which I agree with, is he's kind of at that stage in his career where he's kind of got that regal sort of, I'm just overseeing this kind of like Tom Landry kind of vibe to him, which I think in this day and age, in terms of connecting with young people, connecting with players, that is not quite the lane you want to be in. You know, if you look at some of the, I mean, Kirby Smart, very emotive, you know.
Yeah.
You know, Nick Saban, very emotive. Dabo in his prime, very, very emotive. You know, you look at the really good young coaches. I mean, you know, so again, these are generalizations, but I think that part of that is that what you said about wanting to do well for Marcus Freeman, I think it's different than that. I think what Marcus Freeman's superpower is getting these guys to buy into playing for each other. I think when you really create a culture, it's when you're playing, when you don't want to let the guy next to you
The other
down.
guy,
If
yeah,
you're a
next to
left
you down. That's
tackle,
exactly right.
the
Yeah.
worst thing you can imagine is letting your left guard down. You know, like
That's
if you're
right.
a quarterback, the worst thing you can imagine is overthrowing an open receiver because you rob that guy of a yards after catch. You know, that's the kind of sort of mentality that you create. And I don't think that's Brian Kelly's strong suit. You know,
No, it's not.
I think that's, you know.
No, it's definitely not. But, you know, one of the nice things I saw, I don't know if you guys got a chance to watch Freeman's press conference, but one of the reporters asked him, hey, you know, this is a big, huge win. You guys being able to come down here in this environment, blah, blah, blah. How do you feel as a head coach being able to orchestrate this? And immediately he said, well, wait a minute, this has got nothing to do with me. I've got some really strong assistant coaches that have pulled this off, and, you know, immediately deflected any kind of praise whatsoever to the staff that he's got, the guys that are working behind the scenes. And I think that's just a great sign of a guy who's
Absolutely.
at that high of a level, being that humble, but then also being all about his players. And that's the kind of stuff that if everybody buys into it, if the team is truly believing in that, like you say, Ed, where they don't want to let each other down, then great things can happen because you don't have to be. Now, look, I'm going to be honest as I can be honest here. I watched the USC and LSU game, and I thought there were two different teams at a higher level than what I saw Notre Dame and Texas A&M.
I agree. It was a really
I'm being honest here. That was a different
Mm-hmm.
level type game.
Definitely.
And so
Definitely.
we have got to compete in that environment. And the way you compete is you separate yourself with these kind of things like, Ed, what you're referring to. Do the team believe in each other better than the other team that you're facing? Because you know what? There is some serious talent in both of those teams. I think Moss is the real deal. I think USC is going to be a bitch for us at the end of the year. If they continue on a trajectory that is going to be a absolutely tough win going out to the Coliseum facing a team like that. With some Branch is ridiculous. I mean, he's got another gear like you wouldn't believe. Even though I saw some great signs from Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. I mean, those guys got an extra gear that we've not seen at the running back in a long time. But USC is absolutely loaded with talent. Don't kid yourself.
It was night and day the way they tackled and the way they played at the point of attack. I mean, they, you know, their defensive, their front seven and their cornerbacks, the tackles they made on the edge and stuff. I mean, it looked very, very different than what I've seen the last couple of years from USC. So I agree with you. It was a better played football game. Both teams looked better prepared, to tell you the truth, than the two teams on Saturday night. So, but you know, again, these kids. One thing I will say is I don't buy into the conventional wisdom that the next couple games are going to be sort of squeakers for Notre Dame. You know, like we've had in the past. You know, this idea of like, oh, well, you know, what happened at Marshall, and then the week after that, and then, you know, this letdown after I really think that they're going to improve this week. and take care of business, and then they're going to go to Purdue and play. I mean, I think they're going to progress like that, and I think they've got an emotional maturity where I don't expect a letdown at all. I expect them. There was so much focus on this game last Saturday. I think it was very liberating. There was some relief as well as a sense of accomplishment because they know that we haven't done something like that since Oklahoma in 2012 or whatever.
Yeah.
You go to
Yeah.
a quality opponent on the road and win. So yeah, I expect them to play well the next couple of weeks.
I would agree there.
I think they see the opportunity in front of them. I mean,
Yeah.
as much as people complain, oh, Notre Dame's schedule's easy, blah, blah, blah. Well, I think Notre Dame's schedule is favorable, and having gotten past probably, I would say, the toughest road game that they're going to play this season. I realize SC is talented, but they have a crowd that can be as best described as disinterested. So
yeah,
I think
Georgia Tech is
Georgia Tech's going to be interesting. I'm going to be at that one, and I think it's an unknown. They're going to be playing in I can't remember the name of the place that the Falcons play, but the Mercedes-Benz, yeah. And is that going to change things? Would it be louder or crazier if they were playing in there more of a bandbox thing where people are close? I mean, who knows? But I think these players see they have an outstanding opportunity in front of them. I think people can talk about Marshall all they want. I think Marcus Freeman learned from that game. I think he learned from Stanford. I think that's the thing I like about Marcus Freeman the most. I mean, not only does he have that emotional connection with his players, he's humble enough, as you point out, to know that he still has stuff to learn. Yeah. He's not going to walk up to a thing and talk about his 34 years in coaching. And I realize he hasn't been coaching for 34 years, but he's willing and able to stand up in front of his players, fans, media people, whoever, and admit when he's fallen short, something he can do better. And I think that is part of what endears him to his players, that he can get up and say, if there was a failure, it was my failure. If there was a success, it was their success. I mean, that's the age-old formula for quality leadership, is praise in public and criticize in private. So I think Freeman really has a grip on that. I think he's got a roster of 85 or whatever players who would run through a wall for him. And the opportunity, I don't see a letdown either.
Yeah, so Ed, I'm not going to ask you let's skip the predictions because 50 to 3 or 45 to 10 or 40 to 20, whatever. But what do you think that needs to happen in this game this coming Saturday against Northern Illinois? I mean, what would you like to see in terms of the improvement from game 1 to game 2?
Yeah,
that would be a sign for huge success for Notre Dame.
On offense, I'd like to see sort of a little better connection between Leonard and his receivers. I'd love to see Mitchell Evans get involved in the offense a little bit if he's a little bit healthier. And of course, we got to remember this is still a very young offensive line. So I'd love to see a little bit more consistency. I don't think there shouldn't be any tackles for losses in this game. I mean, like there are plenty of them against Texas A&M, but there shouldn't be in this game. So just kind of like, basically improvement across the board. I think on the defense, I really want to see, obviously overall, they've got to cut down mistakes, penalties, let's see if they can get under 50 yards of penalties. That's a place where you got to start, you got to go from 80 to 50 and then, on defense, I just want to see some better tackling, especially better open field tackling. Morrison missed a couple, Schuler missed a couple, I think, I want to see RJ Oben do something. I mean, he was invisible. He didn't, he looked lost. So, there's always room for improvement. I'll tell you a couple things that I was really sort of encouraged about. I kind of picked up between the lines that there was some concern about Jeter in terms of, his accuracy or his syncing up well with his snapper and holder. I think they switched holders a couple times before they settled on one and did some stuff. But, he was excellent. He was composed, and that's what that's what you want. You want the Jeter that made 25 out of 29 field goals before he got to Notre Dame or whatever it was.
Yep.
So, I don't think I think that was sort of something that you could feel a little bit good about. And obviously the coverage, the punting coverage game, and the kick return game. I mean, they had a very speedy freshman back there.
Yeah.
A&M, who was highly touted, and they controlled him, contained him. So that's all. Just better across the board, but mostly, the way the offense consistently moves the ball, sustains drives, and gets the ball into the end zone. I don't want to see 3 field goals on Saturday.
Yep. Yeah, I agree with you. Coffee, is there anything else that you think that you'd want to see in that?
Well, I can think of a couple things that I don't want to see, and building a little bit of I don't want to see drive killing penalties, or on defense drive extending penalties. I mean, keeping the mistakes low, especially against a team that should be outmatched talent wise, is key. I don't want to see Riley Leonard on the field in the fourth quarter. I want them to be ahead by enough that we can see what Steve Angeli or Kenny Minchie or CJ Carr can do. And I guess if there is one thing I do want to see, is I get the feeling from what I've read that keeping the passing game short was part of the game plan on Saturday, just because they didn't want to give an inexperienced line a lot of responsibility for keeping the defenders off Leonard for a long period of time. That's not going to be a problem on Saturday. I want to see a longer passing game. I want to see Riley Leonard establish the fact that he can complete passes deep, because if he doesn't show that tendency as the season progresses, we're going to see linebackers and safeties like blitzing with impunity because they don't feel like they need to worry about the deep ball. Leonard needs to give him a deep ball to worry about. So I would like to see that.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I do think that's kind of interesting. The one tough thing is all of the scheming that goes on behind the scenes that we don't know about. The coaches, Denbrock, and all of them not wanting to show stuff to the next opponent that we're going to play. It's all interesting to me, because I wonder how much that comes into play. But certainly, I think what you'd like to see, at least in this game, is can Riley throw the deep ball? He didn't throw one the entire night against A&M. Now, I understand that was by design, but you got to wonder, like, okay, is he capable of that? Can he? He didn't have the best of games in terms of total yardage. I mean, he didn't even break 200 yards. But by the same token, he gained 63 on the ground, which is huge. I mean, that's just absolutely huge to put the kind of pressure on the defense. And
but you know what? I will take 160 yards passing and no turnovers. And
no turnovers. Yeah, we forgot to talk about that. That's huge.
Yeah.
I don't care what anybody says. That is coaching. That is absolutely coaching. That is, without a doubt, in practice, professing taking care of the ball and making that a priority. You can't go through a game like that at Texas A&M and not turn the ball over, and that not being a huge key to success. I mean, it totally was. So I mean, hats off to Freeman and his staff, because that was arguably that was the game, if you think about it.
Yeah, that's how you went on the road. Yeah.
It's 13-13 in the fourth quarter with 3 minutes to go.
Yep.
And all of a sudden you don't turn the ball over up to that point, and to then execute from a running standpoint. It's not like we had to like open it up and throw it out. We executed through running the football and just pounding it in the fourth quarter. I mean, that's just huge. But
and we didn't do much with the turnovers that we got.
No, we didn't. Yeah, we didn't.
True.
We didn't convert those. But moving forward here, I think you've got to look at the game and say, okay, here are the key areas that we've got to improve upon. You can't have 9 penalties in the first half. I mean, that's unacceptable. That is crazy. So you want to see some improvement there. But I would like to see the offense, coming together here and not missing big, huge assignments like they did, letting guys come free. You can't have that anymore. And so some improvement there is great. But, this is a key moment for Notre Dame, because they're going to face 3 games, all winnable games. And then you get to Louisville, and then, let's see where we're at that point. If Notre Dame comes out and dominates that football game, that's going to be a great sign moving forward. especially with a lot of the revenge factor and everything that goes into that. But I think the elimination of the penalties is going to be huge, a much more concise, cleaner game from us offensively, and just making our assignments and not making those mistakes that we did. That's going to be huge.
Agreed.
And I look, I think things are looking really good. This is a great opportunity for Notre Dame. You got the win that you needed. Let's see where this goes. But man, this could be something special, depending upon how things shake out with the playoffs and where we land and who we're up against. But we'll see. I mean, there's a lot more football to be played here. 8 weeks from now, it could be totally different if Florida State's coming in, 5-5, and A&M is 3-6.
Well, to remove yourself from the danger zone when it comes to the playoff, you kind of had to win, right? You had to figure a way to beat Texas A&M. That was the first step.
Huge.
So now you've got a little bit of grace. You've got a little bit of leeway, a little bit. I think schedules are really funny. Look, USC might turn out to be a top 5 or 10 team. Georgia Tech might turn out to be a top 15 team. Louisville might turn out to be a top 50. We just don't know. And all these teams are different week to week. I think the thing is that people will look at Notre Dame's schedule and they'll see Northern Illinois, Miami of Ohio, Army, and Navy. That's a legitimate criticism. I mean, those are not,
sure.
Although
technically Miami, Florida was supposed to be on the schedule and backed out at the last minute, which is why Army is there.
That is true. Yep.
That's right. Understandable. It's crazy schedule. I mean, I can't imagine trying to schedule games in this environment the last couple of years.
God. Yeah, unbelievable.
Yeah, but you know what? I mean, listen, I mean, I always get a kick out of people who bitch about schedules because when they're drawn up, who the hell knows who's going to be good and who's not going to be good.
Exactly. They're 3 years out. I mean, what the hell? Anything can happen.
I mean, when Stanford was extended, I mean, they were, going to the Rose Bowl every year and, getting 400 yards rushing the game and beating the shit out of just about everybody, so whatever. But
interesting.
Yeah.
All right, good deal. We'll leave it there. You've been listening to Dome and Domer, an online conversation about Notre Dame sports from a fan's perspective. For Edge Danik, Mike Coffey, I'm Mike Bremer. Thanks for listening.